In a distant future, on a planet not so different from Earth, the dominant species had developed in ways that humans could hardly comprehend. Towering beings with elongated limbs and crystalline eyes. Their society was built upon principles so alien, yet deceptively familiar. These beings, known as the Lyrans, had cultivated a deep fascination with humans. After discovering Earth and observing its inhabitants, they regarded humanity as quaint, fragile, and amusing creatures, no more threatening than a playful kitten to their advanced minds. Humanity's capacity for emotion, curiosity, and attachment were merely curious oddities. The Lyrans' first contact with humans was not one of conquest, but collection. Like naturalists plucking specimens for study, they transported humans in their ships, treating them as living exhibits, pets to be cherished and admired. Earth was left in relative peace. Though it was under constant surveillance and periodic visits, the Lyrans did not see humans as equals or threats. They saw them as delightful accessories to their lives, something to entertain and nurture in their sprawling, crystalline cities. Humans taken by the Lyrans found themselves living in environments tailored to mimic Earth's biomes, albeit with a surreal twist: fields of glowing grass, oceans that shimmered like liquid silver, trees that sang when touched. The humans were fed and cared for as one might care for a prized animal. Their needs provided for, their habitats meticulously maintained. But there was no freedom to leave and no voice to argue their captivity. The Lyrans viewed their actions as benevolent. They could not understand why some humans resisted captivity, why they yearned for a life beyond their artificial enclosures. The Lyrans would stroke their crystal-like limbs against human faces in gestures of what they perceived as comfort, often cooing in their melodic tones, attempting to calm their agitated pets. But humans are creatures of boundless will. Their spirits do not easily bend, no matter the gilded cage. Among the Lyrans was a family who owned a small group of humans, a male and a female paired together, and a young child born during captivity. The family adored the child, whom they named Little Spark for the brightness of their eyes. The child had become the center of their fascination. The way Little Spark toddled about the enclosure, giggling, chasing glowing insects, brought endless delight to the Lyran family, who took immense pride in showing off their pet to friends and neighbors. Little Spark was unaware of the gravity of captivity, unlike the adults who remembered the green hills of Earth and the freedom of open skies. The child's world began and ended with the artificial biome and the crystalline walls. They were loved and well cared for, but the adults whispered tales of freedom to one another, speaking in hushed voices in the shadows of their enclosures. Their hope lay in the belief that one day they might see Earth again. Years passed, and Little Spark grew more curious. They would climb the synthetic trees, peer through gaps in the crystalline walls, and ask the adults questions. Their innocence burned with a quiet intensity that both inspired and worried the human adults. They feared the Lyrans' response if the child's curiosity ever went too far. Still, they encouraged Little Spark to learn and to question, as it was their only defiance left. One day, tragedy came. Without warning, a storm of energy swept through the Lyran city, cascading from the sky with bursts of chaotic light. It was an anomaly unseen before by their kind. Their crystalline structures absorbed the energy, but it was too much. Entire sections of the city collapsed, and within moments, the once perfect skyline was broken, shards of crystal falling like lethal rain. In the chaos, humans and Lyrans alike screamed, though their voices were worlds apart in pitch and tone. The enclosure housing Little Spark and the others shattered under the weight of the falling debris. The adults shielded the child with their bodies as they fled into the alien streets, now filled with mayhem. The once mighty Lyrans appeared fragile as their limbs cracked under the strain, their crystalline eyes dulled with fear. The humans ran unrestrained for the first time in years. But freedom was painted with terror. They did not know this city. They did not know this world. The Lyran family, who had cared for little Spark, searched desperately through the chaos. Their melodic calls echoing through the fractured streets. The mother's crystalline eyes flickered with dimming light as she scanned for any sign of her cherished pet. But the storm continued to rage with relentless force, obliterating landmarks and spreading destruction further than the eye could see. The father's towering frame stumbled as shards pierced his delicate limbs. The world they had crafted so meticulously was falling apart. In the midst of the chaos, little Spark clung to the male human's hand as the group darted through the labyrinth of broken crystal and glowing rubble. The adults whispered hurried instructions to one another, pointing towards what they hoped was a safe path. Their shared determination grew stronger with every step. Though their lungs burned and their muscles ached, they pressed on with the singular hope of survival. As they fled, they encountered other humans. Some were dazed and injured, others seized the moment to fight back against their former captors. Wielding shards of crystal as makeshift weapons, the Lyrans, overwhelmed by the storm and the rebellion, struggled to maintain control. Their society had never prepared for such an event. Their arrogance and sense of superiority had left them blind to the possibility of collapse. In the heart of the chaos, little Spark witnessed something that would etch itself into their memory forever. A Lyran child, no older by their standards than Spark, lay trapped beneath the debris, their crystalline limbs trembling with fear. Their melodic cries echoed with a sound almost human in its desperation. Instinctively, little Spark tried to run towards them, but the male human held them back, shaking his head with a firm gaze. The world was no place for compassion in that moment. It was survival above all. But the child's cries stirred something deep within little Spark. They broke free from the adult's grip, darting towards the Lyran child with an innocence that defied the chaos around them. The adults shouted in protest, their voices drowned by the storm. As little Spark began to dig through the debris with small trembling hands, the Lyran child's cries softened into a melodic whimper as the human child's determination brought a sliver of hope. The adult humans hesitated for a moment, then joined in the effort. Together, they freed the Lyran child, lifting them from the wreckage and carrying them to what seemed a safer area nearby. The Lyran child looked at little Spark with an expression that transcended species, their crystalline eyes glimmering with something akin to gratitude. It was the first time the Lyrans and humans had connected on such an intimate level, without the barriers of ownership or superiority. Meanwhile, the Lyran family, who had raised little Spark, witnessed the scene from afar. Despite their injuries, they stumbled towards the group, their melodic voices trembling with relief as they called out to their pet, their child, their cherished human. But when they arrived and saw the humans and the Lyran child together, their perspective shifted. They had always seen humans as lesser beings. But this act of compassion in the face of tragedy shattered that illusion. The storm eventually subsided, leaving behind a city in ruins and a society forever changed. The Lyrans who survived began to see the humans not as pets, but as equals, capable of the same depth of emotion and strength of character. The humans who had once been captives now walked freely among their former captors, though the road to true understanding would be long and fraught with challenges. Little Spark became a symbol of unity, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, compassion could bridge the vastest of divides. The Lyran family, who had once been captors, now became protectors, advocates for humanity's rights within their society. They shared the story of the storm, of the human child who had risked everything to save another, and of the adults who had followed their lead. Over time, the ruins of the city gave way to a new kind of community, where humans and Lyrans worked side by side, rebuilding not just their physical world, but the foundations of their relationship. The Humans who had once whispered of freedom in the shadows now spoke openly of hope and possibility. Their voices no longer silenced, their spirits no longer caged. Little Spark grew up in this new world, carrying with them the memories of captivity and the lessons learned in the chaos of that fateful day. They became a bridge between the two species, a living testament to the power of empathy and the unyielding strength of the human spirit.